What would you do if one message destroyed everything you believed about the person you trusted the most? Imagine lying in bed beside the person you've spent years loving, believing your future is safe, believing every promise they ever made. Then, in a single second, your entire world begins to fall apart. At exactly 11:47 p.m., my husband's phone lit up on the nightstand while he was in the shower. I wasn't looking through his phone. I wasn't searching for secrets. I wasn't expecting my life to change forever. But then I saw a notification appear across the screen. There was a heart emoji beside a woman's name I had never seen before, followed by 6 simple words that instantly made my blood run cold. I can't stop thinking about last night. My hands froze. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the shower running in the next room. In that moment, I believed I was about to uncover an affair. I had no idea that message was only the beginning of a secret far darker than anything I could have imagined. And before this story ends, you'll understand why I sometimes wish I had never looked at that screen. Before we continue, I want you to ask yourself something. If the person you loved more than anyone else was hiding the truth from you, would you want to know it? Or would you rather spend the rest of your life believing a beautiful lie? Think carefully, because if you were standing where I stood that night, your answer might be very different. Stay with me until the end, because every clue I uncovered pulled me deeper into a mystery that completely changed my life. I couldn't sleep after seeing that message. I lay awake staring at the ceiling while the clock slowly ticked toward morning. Every time I closed my eyes, those 6 words replayed in my mind. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe the message wasn't what it looked like. I kept searching for reasons to believe the man I loved couldn't possibly betray me. But the harder I tried to convince myself, the louder my memories became. Suddenly, every strange thing that had happened during the last few months started connecting like pieces of a puzzle. He had begun working late more often than ever before. Weekend business trips had become surprisingly common. He smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. Yet the moment I walked into the room, the screen would instantly go dark. Even our conversations had changed. The man who once shared every detail of his day now answered simple questions with only a few words. I had noticed all of it, but love has a strange way of making us ignore the warning signs we don't want to face. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen, as if nothing had happened. He walked in wearing his usual smile, poured himself a cup of coffee, kissed my forehead, and softly said, "Good morning. I love you." Hearing those words hurt more than I can ever explain. I looked into his eyes, searching for guilt, fear, or even the smallest crack in his expression. But there was nothing. He looked exactly like the man I had trusted for years. That almost made it worse. I forced myself to smile back, pretending everything was normal, while my heart quietly shattered inside my chest. As he grabbed his car keys and headed for work, he turned around one last time and smiled at me. "Don't wait for dinner tonight," he said. "I have another late meeting." Then he disappeared through the front door. I stood there in complete silence, long after his car had driven away. Something inside me whispered that this wasn't another meeting. For the first time in our marriage, I realized I no longer believed his words. That afternoon, I opened our online bank account to distract myself. At first, everything looked ordinary. Grocery stores, utility bills, gas stations. Then I noticed several charges from places I didn't recognize. Expensive restaurants we had never visited together. Hotel payments listed during the same weeks he claimed to be traveling for work. Small purchases that seemed meaningless on their own, but together painted a picture I couldn't ignore. When I asked him about one of those charges later that evening, he barely looked up from his phone before saying, "It was probably a work expense. I'll check later." He never checked. Days passed, and my anxiety grew heavier. I became someone I hardly recognized. Every ringtone made my heart race. Every late-night text filled me with dread. Every excuse sounded more rehearsed than the last. I hated feeling suspicious. I hated doubting the man I had built my entire future around. But deep inside, I knew something was terribly wrong. The question was no longer whether he was hiding something. The real question had become what he was hiding. Then something happened that changed everything. 3 nights later, while folding laundry in the bedroom, I heard his phone vibrate again. This time, he had accidentally left it charging on the dresser before stepping outside to answer a call. I wasn't planning to touch it. I honestly wasn't. But another notification appeared on the lock screen before my eyes could look away. It wasn't from the same woman. It was from a completely different name, and the message was even more disturbing. She still doesn't know, does she? The moment I read those words, every fear inside me turned into something far worse. This wasn't just a secret relationship anymore. Someone else knew the truth. Someone else believed I was being kept in the dark. And for the first time, I realized this story wasn't going to end the way I had imagined. But what I discovered the following day wasn't an affair at all. It was a secret that had been buried for years. And once I uncovered it, there was no way to put my life back together again. The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed answers, but I also knew that confronting him without knowing the full truth would only give him a chance to explain everything away. If he was lying, he had probably been lying for a long time. People who become comfortable with deception are often prepared for difficult questions. I couldn't let that happen. So instead of confronting him, I decided to watch, to listen, and to notice every detail that I had ignored for far too long. For the next several days, I became painfully aware of the little things. He started leaving the room whenever his phone rang. If I walked into his home office unexpectedly, he would quickly lock his laptop or switch to another screen. His smile seemed forced, and even though he still kissed me goodbye every morning, it no longer felt genuine. There was an invisible wall growing between us, and every passing day made it taller. Then something unusual happened. On Thursday evening, he came home earlier than expected. He looked exhausted, but not in the way someone looks after a long day at work. He looked nervous. He barely touched his dinner and kept checking the time every few minutes. Around 9 o'clock, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, stood up so quickly that his chair almost tipped over, and quietly walked outside into the backyard. Curiosity got the better of me. I carefully stepped toward the kitchen window, just close enough to hear pieces of the conversation. His voice was low, almost desperate. "I know. Just give me a little more time." A long silence followed. "No. She doesn't suspect everything yet." Another pause. "I'll handle it before she finds out." My heart sank. There was no misunderstanding anymore. He wasn't just hiding something. He was talking to someone about me. That night I barely slept. Every possibility raced through my mind. Was there another woman? Was he planning to leave me? Had our entire marriage been built on lies? I wanted to believe there had to be another explanation, but hope was becoming harder to hold on to. The following afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I noticed a folded receipt sticking out of his jacket pocket. I almost ignored it, but something inside me said this wasn't a coincidence. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. It wasn't a restaurant receipt. It wasn't a hotel bill. It was from a private storage facility on the other side of town. I stared at the address for several seconds. We had never rented a storage unit. He had never mentioned one. Why would he secretly pay for a place to store something? More importantly, what could possibly be inside that he wanted to hide from me? For the rest of the day, I couldn't think about anything else. Every answer seemed to create 2 more questions. By evening, I had made up my mind. The next morning, after he left for work, I drove to the storage facility. The entire drive felt unreal. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I replayed every memory from our marriage. I remembered our wedding day, the promises we had made, the dreams we had shared. I kept asking myself one question over and over. What if everything I believed about my husband was a lie? When I arrived, the building was almost empty. The manager greeted me politely, but without my husband's access code, there was nothing he could legally show me. I thanked him and walked back to my car, feeling defeated. Just as I was about to leave, something caught my attention. Across the parking lot, I saw a woman standing beside a silver SUV. She looked familiar, although I couldn't immediately remember why. She was holding several cardboard boxes and talking to an employee. Then our eyes met for just a second. The expression on her face changed instantly. It wasn't surprise, it wasn't confusion, it was fear. Without saying a single word, she quickly loaded the boxes into her vehicle, climbed inside, and drove away faster than seemed normal. I sat frozen behind the wheel. Why had she looked so frightened? Did she recognize me? Or had she recognized my husband's car parked behind mine? The questions kept piling up. That evening, I casually mentioned the storage facility during dinner, pretending I had driven past it by accident. For the first time since all of this began, I saw genuine panic flash across his face. It lasted only a second. Then he forced a smile. "Oh, that's probably an old work account. I forgot to cancel it." The explanation sounded rehearsed. Too quick, too perfect. And worst of all, he never once asked why I had been near that area. At that moment, I realized something important. He wasn't simply hiding a mistake. He was protecting a secret. A secret so important that even the smallest question made him nervous. That night, while he slept beside me, I quietly opened my laptop and searched through old family photographs, trying to remember where I had seen the woman from the parking lot before. I clicked through birthday parties, holiday dinners, vacation pictures. Then suddenly, there she was, standing in the background of a photograph taken nearly 8 years ago. She wasn't a stranger. She had attended our wedding, but she hadn't come as one of my friends. She had come as one of his guests. My heart stopped. If she had known my husband all these years, then this secret had been buried long before I ever found that text message. And what I uncovered after tracking her down would force me to question every single year of our marriage. The next morning, I woke up with only one thought on my mind. I had to find the woman from the parking lot. If she had been at our wedding, then she wasn't a stranger who had suddenly appeared in our lives. She had been connected to my husband for years, hidden in plain sight while I remained completely unaware. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that she held the answers I had been desperately searching for. Using the old wedding photographs, I zoomed in until I could clearly see her face. After hours of searching through old social media posts and forgotten comments, I finally found her profile. It wasn't very active, but there was enough information to tell me where she worked. My heart pounded as I stared at the address on my screen. Part of me wanted to close the laptop and pretend none of this was happening, but another part knew that if I turned away now, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what the truth really was. That afternoon, I parked across the street from the small office building where she worked. Every minute felt like an hour. I watched people come and go until, finally, I saw her walking toward the parking lot with a folder tucked under her arm. Before I could lose my courage, I stepped out of my car. "Excuse me," I called. She turned around, and the color drained from her face. "I think we need to talk." For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. She looked around the nearly empty parking lot, as if hoping someone else would interrupt the conversation. Instead, she took a slow breath and quietly asked, "Did he tell you anything?" I shook my head. "No," I replied. "That's why I'm here." She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, they were filled with sadness rather than fear. "I've been wondering when this day would come." Those words hit me harder than I expected. It sounded as though she had been carrying this secret for years. We walked to a nearby coffee shop and found a quiet table in the corner. For almost a full minute, she simply stared into her untouched cup of coffee. Finally, she looked at me and said something I will never forget. "Before I tell you anything, you need to promise me you'll listen until I'm finished." I nodded. She reached into her handbag and carefully placed an old photograph on the table. I picked it up. It showed my husband standing beside her. They looked younger, maybe 10 years younger. But what caught my attention wasn't the picture itself. It was the little girl standing between them, smiling at the camera while holding both of their hands. I felt every ounce of strength leave my body. My first thought was exactly what anyone would think. He had another family. The room suddenly felt smaller. My breathing became shallow, and tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "You have a daughter together," I whispered. The woman immediately shook her head. "No." I looked at her in confusion. "Then who is she?" The woman took a deep breath. "Her name is Emily." She paused for several seconds before continuing. "She's my daughter." I stared at her, waiting for the rest. Then she quietly added, "But your husband isn't her father." I blinked in complete confusion. Nothing made sense anymore. If he isn't her father, then why is he in this picture? She looked down at the photograph before answering. "Because he promised someone he would always protect her." I frowned. "What does that mean?" Tears slowly formed in her eyes. "Years before you met him, your husband lost someone he loved very much." I felt my heartbeat quicken. "He had a younger brother," she continued softly. "His brother died unexpectedly in a car accident. Before he passed away, he asked your husband to look after me and my daughter, because we had no one else." I couldn't speak, she continued. "He kept that promise. He helped us financially whenever we struggled. He visited Emily on birthdays because she reminded him of his brother. He became part of our lives, not because of a secret relationship, but because he refused to break the promise he made to his dying brother." I stared at her, unable to process everything I had just heard. If that was true, then what about the text message? What about the late-night phone calls? The hidden storage unit? The strange bank charges? None of it fit together. As if she could read my thoughts, the woman slowly shook her head. "I didn't send that message." I froze. "What? The message you saw?" She looked directly into my eyes. "It wasn't from me." Every question I thought had been answered suddenly came rushing back. "If it wasn't you," I whispered, "then who sent it?" The woman looked away for a moment before speaking. "I don't know. But I do know one thing." She leaned closer across the table. "Your husband has been trying to protect you from something much bigger than either of us." A chill ran down my spine. For weeks I had believed I was uncovering an affair. Now I realized I had only been scratching the surface. Someone else was involved, someone neither of us had expected. And just as I stood up to leave the coffee shop, my phone vibrated. It was a message from my husband. Only 3 words. "We need to talk." But before I could even reply, another message arrived from an unknown number. "Don't trust him." At that moment, I realized the truth was still hiding in the shadows, and the most dangerous chapter of this story was only beginning. My hands trembled as I stared at the 2 messages on my phone. "We need to talk." Then, just seconds later, "Don't trust him." 2 messages, 2 completely different warnings. And somehow, I knew that whichever one I believed would change my life forever. I looked up, hoping to ask the woman one more question, but she was already gathering her things. "If I were you," she said quietly, "I'd let him explain everything before making a decision." With that, she walked away, leaving me alone with more questions than answers. The drive home felt endless. Every possibility raced through my mind. Had my husband lied to me for years? Was someone trying to destroy our marriage? Or was there a truth that neither of us had seen coming? When I finally pulled into the driveway, his car was already there. He was waiting, standing on the front porch. The moment he saw me, he didn't look angry. He looked exhausted, as though he had been carrying a weight that had finally become too heavy to bear. "I know you have questions," he said softly. "I do," I replied. "And this time, I want the truth. No excuses, no half answers, everything." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his pocket and placed a small silver key in my hand. "The storage unit," he whispered. "I think it's time you saw what's inside." Neither of us spoke during the drive. The silence between us was louder than any argument. When we arrived at the storage facility, he unlocked the door and slowly rolled it open. I had prepared myself for almost anything. Another woman's belongings, evidence of a secret family, hidden money, even divorce papers. But what I saw inside left me speechless. There were dozens of carefully labeled boxes, old family photographs, handwritten journals, children's drawings, medical files, photo albums, and in the center of the room, a large wooden memory chest. He walked toward it carefully, almost as if it contained something fragile. "It belonged to my brother," he said. "My parents couldn't bear to keep these things after he died. Every memory hurt too much. They wanted to throw everything away." He paused, gently running his hand across the old wooden lid. "But I couldn't let that happen." He opened the chest. Inside were birthday cards, old letters, a baseball glove, school awards, faded photographs, and dozens of small keepsakes collected over an entire lifetime. "I rented this place because I couldn't lose the last pieces of him." His voice began to shake. "I told myself I'd tell you one day, but every year it became harder. I thought if I kept hiding it, maybe the pain would disappear." I looked around the room. Every strange bank charge suddenly made sense. The storage payments, the flowers purchased every year on the same date, the money quietly sent to help his brother's family. He hadn't been building another life. He had been protecting memories from a life he never finished grieving. Tears filled my eyes. "But the message," I whispered. "The one that said, 'I can't stop thinking about last night.'" He looked genuinely confused. "What message?" I showed him the screenshot I had secretly taken that first night. His face changed instantly. "I've never seen this before." For the first time since this nightmare began, I believed him. He unlocked his phone and searched through every conversation. Nothing. The message wasn't there. Whoever had sent it had deleted it almost immediately. Then he remembered something. "A few weeks ago," he said slowly, "I left my phone on my desk during a company event. A coworker borrowed it to make a call because her battery had died." He frowned. I never thought anything of it. A cold chill ran through me. Could someone have sent the message as a cruel joke? Or to intentionally make me doubt my husband? A few days later the answer arrived. One of his coworkers requested a private meeting. She admitted everything. She had developed feelings for my husband over several months. He had politely but firmly rejected her every time. Embarrassed and angry, she wanted to create distance between us. So while briefly holding his phone, she sent herself a message, deleted the conversation from his device, and hoped I would notice the notification before it disappeared forever. She never imagined I actually would. She apologized through tears. She accepted responsibility. Soon afterward, she resigned from the company. Listening to her confession, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Weeks of fear, sleepless nights, broken trust, all because of one selfish decision. But even after the truth came out, something inside me had changed. That evening, my husband and I sat together on the back porch as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the trees. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "You should have trusted me with your grief," he nodded. "I know. I thought protecting you meant carrying everything alone." "It doesn't," I replied. "Love isn't about hiding pain, it's about sharing it." He reached for my hand. "I'm sorry." Those two words couldn't erase everything that had happened, but they were a beginning. Healing doesn't happen in a single day. Trust doesn't magically return overnight. We spent months rebuilding what fear, silence, and misunderstanding had nearly destroyed. Some conversations were difficult, some days were painful, but this time, we faced them together. Looking back now, I often think about that night at 11:47 p.m. For a long time, I believed that one notification had ruined my life. Now I understand something very different. The message didn't destroy our marriage. Silence almost did. Because secrets, even those meant to protect the people we love, can become walls that slowly separate us. And sometimes The greatest act of love isn't pretending to be strong. It's having the courage to tell the truth before someone else writes a story that isn't real. So let me ask you one final question. If you discovered a message that shattered everything you believed, would you immediately assume the worst? Or would you have the courage to search for the whole truth first? Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes it heals. But it's almost always more powerful than the story our fears create. The end.